The Law and the Promise, a study guide by Neville Goddard. It hardly ever crosses our mind that the world might be different in essence from what common sense tells us that it obviously is, right? For many of us, we've been taught for so long from people who have come before us that everything is the way it is. So, in an orderly fashion, without questioning it, without doubt, we all follow suit. We've been taught, for instance, that hard work yields success. So the more effort you put towards external things, the more success and happiness one will achieve. Now, if you've taken this course of action, if you've gone down this path and this has been your journey, you're going to come to realize that this formula of success does not guarantee success, right? The accumulation of things through hard work does not guarantee happiness. It just guarantees more things and more hard work, to move through life with more ease and flow and grace. We have to create from a different space. Now, listen, if life is not about abandoning all material possessions of the world, but we have to realize that our craving for them as the thing that we need most keeps us attached to them at the end of the day, right? And this is what I love about this book, because this book discusses how there are basic laws to creation. And if you follow the principles of creative visualization and imagination and aligning with the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you give birth to your desires and you begin to experience life in a new way. Most importantly, you begin to navigate life with more ease and flow, and that becomes your reality. And this is part of the reason why I share this. I share this information because since I've embodied this in my life, I've seen such remarkable shifts and changes that have revealed to me the power of being in energetic alignment and from creating within. And to be honest with you, not everything that I have focused on has come to pass as of yet, has not come to fruition. Many have. But for me, the greatest takeaway that I've learned is that I've learned to enjoy the journey of life more. I've learned to enjoy the process. For me now, it's not just about the destination, but it's about the journey. It's about who I meet. It's about creating space for what I want in my life to come in. But it's also about on the journey, you will meet people, places, and circumstances that are constantly guiding you. So because of that, you approach life with more ease and flow because you trust that what's meant for you will appear for you. And what you receive, even if it's not in alignment, it's still guiding you. And for me, there's a peace of mind, there's a flow, there's an ease to creating life from that space. Neville says the purpose of the first portion of this book is to show through actual true stories how imagination creates reality. The world in which we live is a world of imagination. In fact, life itself is an activity of imagining. Within the course of this book, Neville shares stories of people who have embraced the concept of creating from imagination and how this has worked for them to bring forth their desires. We are shown that imagination is the true cause. It's the only way to create. And for those that are awakened and at a certain level of consciousness, they will see this. And for those that are not awakened and at a different level of consciousness, they will not notice this. So, knowing this, we have to ask ourselves, do we want to live our lives awakened and in our imagination and aligned with our creative self, the self that imagines what it desires and it would imagine how it would feel to live the life that they want to live and create from that space? Or do we want to be at the whim of our five sensory self that takes information in from the external world, from past experiences, and creates from that space? We have to remember that consciousness is the one and only reality and the first and only cause of substance. That means everything originates from consciousness. Now, in our journey of using our imaginary faculties and raising our consciousness and raising our awareness, we start to realize that if we change the self within and we change the way we look at the world begins to change. Now, when we get deeper into this, we realize that the external world is just a reflection of how we believe the world to work. Because when we learn solely through our five sensory experiences, or when we learn through what other people tell us, or when we learn through what we acquire through material, we suppress our creative and imaginary faculties, right? We ignore our desires and we kind of fall into this place where we're doing what we've always done. Now, when you value material more than you value yourself, you go into idolatry. You idolize the material and you make your whole chase, the whole purpose of life, about how much I can gain and what that's going to do for me. You get your validation from those things. But along the way, for most of us, we realize that this is not the way to create. You know, you get to a certain stage of life and you realize that you can tap into your own meaning. And when you tap into your own creative faculties, you realize that the world materializes based on your own meaning. And then the more that you venture down this, you realize that you have the power and you can create your own reality by your own meaning. But to do this will require a strong level of faith and belief in yourself and in your imagination. You know, it's interesting we say this because imagination is commonly understood as the opposite of reality, right? It's not respected as a way to create. Hence the reason why people say, get out of your heads and get out of the clouds and focus. But the truth is, your imagination is unlimited to what it can accomplish, right? As said, it's the actual creative power of God within you. Everything you create and experience in your life is a result of what you've imagined. What you imagine comes from your self concept. If you have a poor self concept of self, your imagination is going to be poor. If you have a high self concept of yourself, you're going to be able to easily imagine that you can have whatever you want. You know, when you find it difficult to see yourself in situations that you want, such as the job that you want or the career that you desire, and you tend to see the opposite, the negative, the doubts, the fears, the limited beliefs, you know, as per the principles of creation, we have to understand that we attracted those things. On all those experiences are a result of what we imagine and what we believe to be true. And if my negative thoughts, feelings, and beliefs yield negative results, at the same time, I can also induce the reverse. And my positive thoughts and feelings and beliefs can also yield positive results. You know, as Neville stated, nothing appears or continues in being by a power of its own. Events happen because comparatively stable imaginal activities created them, and they continue in being only as long as they receive such support. You know, when man discovers the secret of imagining, he will have discovered the secret of causation. That is, imagination creates reality. And this is the thing, right? It's to know that what you imagine and what you believe is what you create. What you imagine and what you believe is what you bring forth. Therefore, everything that you experience in your reality is a reflection of what's been impressed on your subconscious and expressed in your outer world. But through imagination, we have the ability to impact what we experience. We are the cause that impacts the effect. You know, and when you know this, you understand the gift that you possess. You understand that we have the power within. The power doesn't come from the outside world. It doesn't come from material things or form. It doesn't come from other people, but it comes from tapping into your higher self, your true self. And by aligning with your gifts, you have the key to bring forth what you desire to experience. You know, but oftentimes we forget this. We turn our attention away from ourselves and we put our attention out the outside world. You know, as the saying goes, your energy flows where your attention goes. You know, and as Neville stated, men pay too little attention to this priceless gift, the human imagination. And a gift is practically non existent unless there is a conscious possession of it and a readiness to use it. And what does he mean by this? Well, a gift is not a gift until it is given or until it's received. Meaning, when you don't know or you don't see the gift as a gift, you actually don't know that you possess a gift, right? The gift of imagination goes unseen because we've been told that this gift has no value or no real use, that it's childish. So as a result, we put that gift in the closet, we put it under the bed, we bury it and we tuck it away. And instead we move towards other things that are in our peripheral view that we believe will make us happy and bring us joy and yield us the results that we desire. You know, at the end of the day, we know what we know and we don't know what we don't know. But what we should know is that these teachings that are being given to us are providing us with the resources or the gifts that are going to help mold our reality so we can live the lives that we desire. However, for this gift to work, it requires you to embody it, right? Information without application is just information, and sometimes, as we know, information is not followed. How many of us have been given information that we don't follow, even when you've told it's been good for you? Cigarettes packs say smoking would kill you, but we still do it. We're often told things that are bad and we do it, and we're told things that are good and we don't do it. So clearly, information alone will not give you what you need. For this gift to be received, it requires that you embody it, which means you have to believe it. And when you believe it, you embody it. And when you embody it, you receive it. And when you understand this, you begin to understand how to create, and you realize that to create in any other way is futile, right? And this is what's meant when we talk about creating a life with more ease and flow, right? To move with grace is to create from your imagination, because life always externalizes what you've imagined. But for so many of us, we're either not aware of this or we're not taught this. So we fail to realize the gifts that we have within. We ignore them and we invest all our energy on external things. And as stated, to attempt to change circumstances before you change your imaginal activity is to struggle against the very nature of things, meaning there can be no outer change until there is imaginary change. To attempt to change your outside world without changing your inner circumstances is to create in vain. The question becomes, how many of us have found ourselves in situations where the external world doesn't reflect or resemble what you want? So as a result, we attempt to force change, right? We don't like the relationship, so we look for another one. And if we don't change from within, we often find ourselves in another relationship that's similar to the one we just left. We don't like our job or our role or the career that we're in, so we leave it. And again, we find ourselves in another role that is similar but different. We've been taught that to achieve excellence is achieved by going outside of yourself. But what we must understand is that what you become is a prerequisite for what you see and what you experience in the world. And by becoming this state, you experience it. Hence the reason why a lot of affirmations require you to take the state of I am, which is claiming you to be what you desire to be in the future. And there are a lot of ways that we can go about this. Claiming yourself to be what you desire to be is one way. Aligning yourself with the feeling of the wish fulfilled is another. And Neville says in himself, he says, self-abandonment is the secret, right? You must abandon yourself mentally to your wish fulfilled in your love for that state. And in doing so, live in the new state and no more in the old state. And so if it's a matter of paying attention to these things, for myself, what I've been doing is I've been trying to allow myself to be more present in the moment, or take inventory of my distractions, what's distracting me in life, or where I'm creating from a place of fear, so I can interrupt that pattern and replace it with more important beliefs, more positive beliefs. And as I impress this on my subconscious, I know that I express this on the outer world, right? As Neville stated, you must abandon yourself mentally to the feeling of the wish fulfilled. And by doing so, you live in this new state and you're no more in the old state. I believe the key ingredient is creating a pattern interrupt. If we look at patterns are accumulated over time and they can be difficult to break. Repetitive habits have been impressed in the subconscious, and as a result, they're expressed in the outside world, and we're often moving on autopilot. But in order for us to experience new patterns in life, we have to shift old patterns. So we all need to stop and ask ourselves the question, like, where am I experiencing old patterns, old beliefs, old routines, old behaviors that are keeping me and preventing me from my growth, right? Because living in your desired states means abandoning old patterns, doubts, limited beliefs, and fears. For me, what I tend to do is, in my journey to shift and change, I try to be more present and in the moment and take inventory of my distractions. Where am I creating from a place of fear? Where am I repeating old patterns? Where am I living from my limited past beliefs, my limited past decisions? As I notice those things, I replace those things with more encouraging, positive beliefs. I release the negative and limited beliefs of the past and replace them with positive beliefs that align with what I desire for myself. As I do this, I impress this on my subconscious, and this is expressed in my outside world. The key ingredient for creating a pattern interrupt is learning new behaviors, but having the awareness to see where the change needs or what change is required, right? Because you can't change something if you're not cognizant of the fact that it's happening, right? So the first step is becoming aware that you are repeating an unhealthy pattern and to identify what that pattern is. And as I identify this and as I'm aware of this, then I can begin the process of shifting and changing. And a way we can shift and change those things is by aligning with what we imagine for ourselves. Picture what we imagine. What do we desire our life to be? How do we desire our life to look like? How would it feel to acquire that? How would it feel to fulfill that dream, that desire, and infuse the imagination with the feeling of the wish fulfilled? And that's how we create. We have the option. We can create from our past experiences, what we experience in our external world, the things that are not working from us. And those things can be impressed on our subconscious and expressed in our outside world. Or we can identify the limiting beliefs, doubts, and fears. We can see the obstacles in our life, but we can make a promise to ourselves and we can create boundaries and we can shift and do a pattern interrupt and say, although I see these things and although this is my past, I'm going to revise it and create the life that I desire for myself. I'm going to imagine life the way I want it to be. And I want to feel the way I desire to feel. And I'm going to create from that space, from that imaginatory space, from that creative space that's aligned with my higher self and my true self. Neville states imagination is both conservative and transformative. It's conservative when it builds its world from images supplied by memory and the evidence of the senses. And it is creatively transformative when it imagines things as they ought to be. As I was saying, when you imagine things as they ought to be, you are imagining yourself in your desire and you are thinking from the feeling of the wish fulfilled. And this is what I was saying before. When you imagine things as they ought to be, you are imagining yourself in your desire and you are thinking from the feeling of the wish fulfilled. And this is ultimately, ideally, how we'd like to create. Whereas when you are wishing for something, you are imagining yourself from the desire and thinking of the desire, right? So to create correctly is to see yourself as the thing now, having it now, experiencing it now, being it. We create incorrectly when we see ourselves as not having what we desire, but hoping that one day we will receive that in which we desire. When we tell ourselves, it would be nice to be there one day, or I wish that I had what they had, or we utter a statement that I would love to do something like that if I could, or maybe one day this or that. It reinforces that we don't have that in which we desire, and it claims us to be something other than what we want. And for many, this could be the challenge. It could be awkward to claim yourself as something that you can't see. And I'll speak for myself. In the infancy of my journey, to claim myself as something that I clearly wasn't felt silly. It wouldn't resonate. I believed that true change came from hard work and effort and taking action and doing the steps. And if I wasn't there yet, then I can't say that I am successful when I didn't feel successful. And this is where a lot of people, I believe, are divided because they believe that hard work and hard work alone yields success. So they work several hours and they feel burnt out and they need to chase deals and chase opportunities. And we're attached to our devices and we're constantly working and we're constantly going and we're finding busy work and things to do to fill our schedule. Or we're on the opposite end of the spectrum where we're so busy that anytime we have free time, we use that opportunity to escape and disconnect, whether it's alcohol or a television or a computer or our devices. But we never find time with self. Now, here's the thing. When one is connected with true self, they make space for self. They make time to align with themselves. And through this process, they become creatively transformed because they understand that imagination is the key to creation, not hard work and not hard work alone. So they invest their time in placing themselves in imaginary states that will resemble what they want to experience in their life, right? And through spiritual sensation and through imagination and the feeling of the wish fulfilled, they make the unseen seen, right? You imagine yourself psychologically where you desire to be physically until you are physically where you desire to be psychologically. When you imagine, you bring forth what you desire. And as you hold that vision, you will begin to see people, places, and circumstances that bring you towards your desires. And when you don't know this, you see encounters in your life as random, as accidental. You're on the effect side of things. You're constantly reactive. We're constantly chasing because we feel like the more we do, the more action we take, the more successful we'll be. But when you know that imagination creates your reality, you start to see how imagination is the catalyst and that people, places, and circumstances are the true links that are connecting you to your final destination. Man, through the medium of controlled, walking dream, can predetermine his future. That imaginal activity of living in the feeling of the wish fulfilled leads man across a bridge of incidents to the fulfillment of the dream. When you align with your imagination and you fuse it with the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you begin the process of creation, of true creation. You'll begin to notice that people, places, circumstances will be drawn towards you, bringing forth what you desire. You'll begin to experience different incidences that are leading you towards your desired dream. Neville refers to this as the bridge of incidents, right? Every circumstance, every place, every situation becomes a bridge, a guide, a teacher that is leading you and guiding you down the path towards your truth, towards your desire, right? It could be an opportunity that shows up in your life. It could be a social gathering that you attend that's leading you towards another opportunity. It can even be a closed opportunity, an opportunity that closes that you had wished for. And by closing that, it opens up space for what you truly desire to come in. But in order to allow ourselves to be guided, we have to pay attention to the signposts. We have to surrender to the feeling of the wish fulfilled, and we have to trust that we are being guided. When we take this approach, we're not so fixated on the outcomes because we trust that the outcome will reveal itself when the time is right and the situation is prepared. And when you live in this space, you move with more ease and flow, and you enjoy the journey as much as you enjoy the final destination. Everything along the way is guiding you, so you move with more grace in your life. You begin to appreciate the journey because it's in the journey that you're being guided. It's where you are learning, where you see the thread that is leading you from one point to the next, right? You begin to trust your intuition more. You get in tune with your body because you're operating from a different space and you're not allowing the noise of others, people's opinions to cloud the actions that you need to take, right? You don't allow fear, anxiety, doubt, or past limiting beliefs or decisions to derail you, right? You don't allow the noise of another person's opinions to derail you, right? Because you notice signs and synchronicities, and they're all bringing you towards what aligns you with your soul's purpose. And this is what it requires. It requires you to trust the situation, even if it's polarizing to how you've created or how other people create success. And when you change the way you look at the world, the way that you look at the world will change. As mentioned earlier, this is the hardest part because you'll want to revert back to old limited beliefs and limited decisions because they breed comfort. You want to doubt yourself because what you desire hasn't appeared yet in your outer world, and your beliefs and your reality are causing you to question the decisions that you made or that you're about to make. And when this happens, we need to have faith and trust. We need to know that as long as I align with my imagination and the feeling of the wish fulfilled, I'm being guided, and I'll start to see the signs and synchronicities, which is creating a bridge leading me from where I currently am to where I desire to be. He can always move the mountain if it accepts his concept of what life ought to be. And this ability to move things as they are to things as they ought to be is one of the most important discoveries that man can make. This allows you to change events that you see in the outer world. It's knowing that everything in our material world is in transition and will soon pass, right? And as it passes, we make room for what we want to experience. It's reminding us that the mountains in our life have the capability to make us upset. But if we remove our attention off the mountains and onto our internal world, we can lift ourselves up, elevate above the mountain, and see the mountain as an illusion, a mirage that will slowly disappear and fade into the background. But if we fixate on them, they have the capacity to be overwhelming. So the question is, where are the mountains in your life? Who are the mountains in your life? And can you take your attention off the mountains and put the attention back onto your desires, back onto the feeling of the wish fulfilled, so you can begin to live this out in your reality? Sometimes our mountains are obstacles that are in our life. And these obstacles can feel so real and seem so real, but because they feel real from a five sensory perspective, it does not mean that that's where they originate. To focus more energy and intention on the obstacles in your life is to give it more energy. And energy flows where attention goes. So sometimes it's a matter of just seeing it for what it is, knowing that if my outside world is incongruent with what I desire to experience and what's being projected, let me shift my energy within, change what's causing that experience. And through that shift and through that change, I'll express a different reality. Our future is an imaginal activity in its creative march. Imagine better than the best you know. To revise the past is to reconstruct it with new content. This is the essence of revision, and revision results in repeal. The first act of correction or cure is always revise. If the past can be recreated into the present, so can the revised past. And thus, the revised past appears within the very heart of her present life. Well, now, what does this mean? Neville is saying that revision is better than correction or cure, because correction or cure imply that it is better to stop something bad from happening than it is to deal with it after it happened. Whereas to revise means you can at any time use your imagination to recreate a situation that occurred in the past so you can experience a different future. Our lives are not bound by time as we believe they are. Therefore, if your past experiences are being manifested in your life in a way that is incongruent with your desires, you can go into your past and revise those experiences so they are in alignment with what you desire. And this is something that I practice as well. I do this in a state of self-hypnosis, and I do it in a state akin to sleep. And the attempt is to relive my past experiences in a way that I see the benefit of it, and I don't hold on to any negativity towards that experience, right? I see the growth in it. I experience my magnetic self or my higher self or my magnetic parents guiding me through a certain experience in a way that is uplifting. And so I feel more empowered in my current state, and what I noticed is I'll have more positive outcomes and positive outlooks towards things. And I'll see past experiences as growth opportunities. And I'm less judgmental of myself for my mistakes and also in others and my experience with others from the past. And when you're able to release things from the past, not only are you raising your vibration and impacting what you track towards you, but you also feel lighter and you're also carrying less weight and baggage into the world. And it's easier for you to align with your feeling of the wish fulfilled. It's easier for you to imagine things that are in high vibration because you don't have this glass ceiling from limited beliefs, doubts, and fears. When we have a lot of limited beliefs and doubts, sometimes we try to imagine things, but it's capped. There's a ceiling to it because we can't see ourselves being any better than that. We can't imagine for ourselves anything better because we have a low self-worth and we don't think that we deserve it. And if we're in the element of trying to create our desires and we need to imagine them and we need to know how it feels, we want to release any shadow, any limited beliefs, any limited decisions so that we can truly imagine what we desire and we can be in a state of deservingness, which has this regal feeling to it. And I deserve this because I truly believe that I can have it. But you can't have what you can't envision, and you can't envision what you don't imagine that you can have. And Neville goes on to say, nothing appears or continues in being by a power of its own. Events happen because comparatively stable imaginal activities created them, and they continue in being by virtue of the support they receive from such imaginal activities. The images of our imagination are the realities of which any physical manifestation is only the shadow. If we are faithful to the vision, the image will create for itself the only physical manifestation of itself it has a right to make. Your imagination is the source. It's where we create reality and where substance takes form. And when you know this, you give more attention and thought and life to your imagination. And this is a time where we're giving more thought to our imagination. It's a time where we're giving more thought to our mood. It's a time where people are being more consciously aware. Overall, you can see that, yes, people are becoming more awakened. There's a higher level of consciousness, although it doesn't stem across. We can't speak for everyone. We say that there is a shift that's happening, and there's an awareness that this process is important for our evolution, for the way we create and for the way that we live our lives. Neville says this is an age in which the mood decides the fortunes of people rather than the fortunes deciding the mood. Many of us believe that it is their achievements that make them happy. But the truth is, it's your mood that decides your happiness, not your achievement. This explains why so many of us can be disconnected from where we are and where we want to be, from what we're doing to work and what we'd like to be doing for work, because many of us have been taught from a young age, to go to school, to graduate, to get your degree, go into a specific line of work, and this is going to make you happy. And for some of us, for the masses, the messaging may be, getting married, having kids, and this should make you happy. But when we subscribe to this, eventually we get to a place where we realize that even after attaining those things, those material things, we're still not happy. For me, I realized that even after attaining all my goals, I was not happy. I would turn to escapism or vices to fill the gap within. And the reason I felt happiness and disconnected because I wasn't in alignment with my higher self. I was chasing form and material, hoping that things outside myself would make me happy. You know, and this is part of the reason why I share my experiences and I share the works of Neville Goddard, because I've come to the realization that when you are doing what you love, the rest will fall into place. You will have abundance and joy and opulence in your life because you're leading internally from a place of love and joy and abundance. It's the mood that decides the fortune of people rather than the fortunes deciding the mood. We are constantly being directed to go inwards to find happiness. And by doing this, we change our experiences. When my mood is positive, my energy vibrates at a higher frequency. I attract the people, places, and circumstances that reflect my energy. I imagine positive thoughts and I see myself as a source of my own happiness, not the material things in my life. The material things are fun and nice to have, but that's exactly it. They are fun and nice to have. But my true happiness comes from within. And when I understand this and I claim myself as being what I desire to be, I become what I desire. As the saying goes, as a man thinketh in his heart, so shall he be. Man, whose all imagination is not the tenant to the brain, but the landlord. Us as men and women, we create from a place of imagination. The all is mind and the universe is mental. We are all connected. And what you focus on from an imaginary state is what you create. And when you're reactive to your conditions and those conditions dictate your thoughts, you resemble the role of the tenant. Whereas if you understand that you are in charge of your thinking, that's making you the cause of your reality, you resemble the role of the landlord. Ultimately, we need to see beyond the perceptual awareness of things or things as they seem to the conceptual awareness of things as they ought to be, right? See your outer world as a guide that is helping you, aligning you with your true nature and what you want to create for yourself. If something in your outer world is not congruent with how you wish to experience the world, that's okay. Just to continue to see things and feel things and envision things as they ought to be, And as you change the way you look at things, the things that you look at will change. You know, and Neville's quote aligns with this perfectly. He says, "In the world of senses, we see what we have to see. In the world of imagination, we see what we want to see. And seeing it, we create it for the world of senses to see." So, what does this mean? If we look at our lives, we can ask ourselves, do I create from a proactive state based on what I feel and what I imagine and what I desire my life to be? Or do I create from a reactive state, from what I see and what I experience and what is reflected onto me from my external world? You know, we create from imagination. So creating from any other place, as I mentioned before, is futile. But because we've been taught to create through the five senses, many of us go through life in this reactive state. And when we're on the effects side of things, we see what we have to see. But when we influence the cause, we leverage our imagination. And in the world of imagination, we see what we want to see. And by seeing it, we create it for the world of our senses to see. You know, and this is how it's done. This is how we truly create. You know, to take it a step further, how we do this is that we imagine in our minds what we desire. And we pair that with the feeling of the wish fulfilled, which is impressed on the subconscious, which is then expressed and reflected in our outside world. Now, the key element that can shift how things come in is that when we're imagining our desires, is to think from the state as if you're currently experiencing it, right? When you fuse the vision with the feeling of the wish fulfilled, the experience becomes more vivid and real. Now, when we think of the state, we separate ourselves from the experience and we become more like an onlooker rather than a participant. You know, we're highlighting what we don't have as opposed to what we do have, you know, and we must be the state to experience the state. You know, as Neville said, it is possible to pass from thinking of to thinking from, but the crucial matter is thinking from. For example, experiencing the state for that experience means unification, whereas in thinking of, there is always a subject and an object, the thinking individual and the thing thought of. You know, it's knowing that what the world looks like really depends on where you are when you make the observation, right? If it's right in front of you, you'll chase it because it's not a part of you. But if it's a part of you, you live it. You don't chase it because you embody it. It's part of you. You know, and I know that oftentimes, like I mentioned before, this is the challenge for a lot of people. You know, how do I see myself as something that I'm not? I've been taught to always chase things. So to say and claim yourself as being something and see yourself as experiencing the wish fulfilled when you haven't received it yet can feel like it's magic or woo or childish. But sometimes we need to ask ourselves, like, where did we adopt this beliefs that this is not the correct way to do things? And when you look at the evolution of man, like how many things in man's experience have come to be proven correct that man originally thought was wrong? You know, there are some people that think this is the way to create, and there's others that don't. And I understand that because at one point I was on this side of the fence too. You know, I had to see things to believe it. And now I'm at a place where I believe with unwavering faith that we create from imagination, vibration, and feeling, and we align with our higher self. You know, I realized that the things that I once saw as childish and woo are actually the ways that we create. Now, after challenging my beliefs, I've come to this understanding that the things that I once challenged have become the ways that I create, right? The stone in which I rejected has become the cornerstone in which I create my life. And this is the part of evolution. This is the beauty of the journey. You know, you have the higher self or the false self, or you have the spiritual person or the natural person. And the spiritual person will see that, you know, I pay attention to signs, symbols, and synchronicities, and I'm constantly being guided. And the natural person will see that I have to see it to believe it. And, you know, success is yielded through hard work and effort and action, right? And we are where we are, and there's no right or wrong necessarily, because we're all on this journey to grow and evolve. And I think that's the beauty of it. You know, I'm just sharing again my experiences in the teaching of Neville Goddard. And Neville says, you know, Neville said, the natural man does not receive the gifts of the Spirit of God because they are folly to him. and he is not able to understand them because they are spiritually discerned, right? If I don't believe in signs, symbols, and synchronicities, I won't see the signs, symbols, and synchronicities, right? And this is what it means. A natural man is heavily invested in the five sensory experience, and to him, his possibilities are a reflection of what he experiences in the physical world and nothing more. Whereas the multisensory spiritual man sees beyond the limitations of the five sensory plane. And because of this, he's able to connect with his instinct, tap into the signs, symbols, and synchronicities, and see them as guidance that's constantly aligning him with his desires, his true self, his higher self. He doesn't have to see it to believe it, because by believing it, he sees it. And we look at the law and the promise, Neville is teaching us that imagination creates your new reality. It teaches us that it's not what you are or what you were, but rather what you choose to become. You are the dreamer of your dream, and your reality is merely a dream that takes form by your imagination. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again.